Hi boys and girls, we are ready to start Logic of English Lesson 8. So we're going to start today with a review of our phonograms, and just like last time, I'm going to say the sound and I want you to repeat so we make sure that we're very accurate with our sounds. Say sh, E-double-E, like her, E-E-A, oi that we may not use, that we may use, O that we may not use at the end of an English word, O that we may use at the end of an English word, ch, k, sh, kwa, k, r, oo, o, or, a that we may not use, a that we may use, and back to sh. Okay. We have two new phonogram sounds that I want to introduce you to today, and these are very important, especially for those of us that are getting into some books that have more difficult words, because you're going to see this a lot. But I actually work with first graders too. I don't know if you knew that. And first graders are facing words that have these combinations of phonograms, so it's very important that you know that these phonograms make certain sounds and words to help you when you go to read them. Let's look at our first one. Do you see how it has 3 letters? Let me say the sound. Say I. That's it, right? Now, maybe you recall from kindergarten or first grade, a lot of kids will go ig, ha. They're trying to stretch out each of the sounds in that phonogram. But that phonogram belongs together. We call it the 3-letter I. Can you say 3-letter I? And when we see this in a word, we're going to explore later where we find this in English words. You're going to just say the I sound. Does that make sense? Say the I sound. Let's look at our next one. It's a W and an H together. Now, I want you to look at these 2 words. Went, while. Do you notice anything different about the sounds between my 2 first phonograms? Between my went and my while? Do you notice a difference in sounds? You probably didn't, and I don't either, and I'm not sure if your teachers will notice it either, and it's because we're from the Midwest. We're from this part of the United States. Excuse me. And in this part of the United States, we don't pronounce these any different. They're just the W sound, like the W sound, right? The W sound. Now in other parts of our world, like in Europe that have countries that speak English, or in Canada or on the East Coast, oftentimes what they'll do with this is it's more breathy. It's like a W sound. And I like to do that with my hand so I can show you what you're doing with your mouth. There's a lot more breath behind it and a lot more room in your mouth, like W. For the purpose of spelling words, when your teacher goes to teach you a word that has the WH, they're going to hold up 2 fingers. So you should automatically know, oh, that's the WH going W. But we can also look at it and say W, more breathy sound. Okay? So we have I and W. Now let's look at this phonogram really quickly. This is a vowel phonogram because it's making a vowel sound I, correct? It's also 3 letters, and what do you notice about my GH? Do you hear that sound at all? No, you don't hear that sound at all, which is going to lead us to a rule later in our lesson. And then this one. What kind of a phonogram is this? Is it a vowel phonogram? No. Is it a multi-letter phonogram? Yes. It's multiple letters combined together to make one sound. W. Does that make sense? Now in your student notebook on page 115, you can go ahead and take just a minute to explore some of the words that have my WH phonogram, W. You can go ahead and underline your WH, and then talk as either a table group or as partners or as an entire class for just a moment. Where do you notice the WH in those English words? Is it at the beginning, middle, or end? You should have noticed that it's at the beginning, right? It's always at the beginning of words. You're never going to see it at the end of words. It's always at the beginning of English words. You can skip this part down here because, again, here in the Midwest and in other parts of the United States, we don't make a difference between these two sounds. It's both just a W sound. Now, you're going to take a second and you are going to watch now a video about some more phonograms that can make lazy sounds.
Stressed and unstressed syllables are an important part of saying English words and spelling them too. Just remember, stressed means the part of the word that takes more work for your mouth to say. Unstressed means the part of the word that's being lazy. It doesn't take any work at all to say unstressed sound. We have learned that any vowel can say its schwa, or I sound in an unstressed part of a word. For example, frozen, kingdom, 7, again, amazing. Even though you see vowels other than the U or the I in these words, the vowels are being lazy because they're in the unstressed part of the word. Today, we want to learn about some R-controlled vowels that can also be lazy. First, let's take a look at some words with the OR phonogram that are being lazy. Listen carefully to the words and see how they are spelled. Actor, tractor, humor, motor, odor. Notice that the OR phonogram is always in the unstressed part of each of these words. Now think about the sound that you heard at the end of each of those words. That's right, you heard the sound, like of her. Now let's try those words again, using the phonogram sound that we learned for OR, and see if the words sound right. Actor, tractor, humor, motor, odor. Is that how we say those words? Of course not. It's harder to say the OR than in those words, so the OR becomes lazy and we say the sound instead. Now let's try some words with the AR phonogram. Listen carefully to the words and see how they are spelled. Lizard, pillar, polar, scholar, popular. What sound did you hear at the end of each of these words? You should have heard the sound, like the in her. The AR phonogram is making an sound. Now let's try those words again using the AR phonogram sound R that we learned. Lizard, pillar, polar, scholar, popular. Is that how we say these words? No way. Just like OR, AR is harder to say in the unstressed part of words, so many times we make an easier or lazier sound for the AR phonogram. Which leads us to a new rule. AR and OR may say their lazy sound in an unstressed syllable. So why does it matter? What's the point? For one thing, it's nice to know that these phonograms are saying a different sound for a reason. And second, it's helpful to know that when we go to spell these words, we need to use the AR and OR phonogram instead of the which is what we hear.
Created using Powtoon.
So what did you think of that rule? Have you ever heard of that before? So for the purpose of spelling, when we go to spell words that have that AR or OR phonogram at the end, we as your teachers are going to really stretch out the sounds in those words. So if we're going to teach you how to spell the word actor, we're not going to say actor. That's how we say it out loud, right? We're going to say actor for the purpose of helping you to be able to spell actor. So you know that it's the OR phonogram at the end and not an ER like the of her. Here's what's going on with English words. Spellings do not change in English words, but the sounds often change throughout time, which is why we see words like actor being still spelled with an OR. We're not going to change the spelling just because over time the sounds have changed. Does that make sense? Which is why popular is still spelled with an AR, popular, because we're not going to change the spelling just because over time the sounds have changed. Now it's time to discover a new rule that is related to our IGH. In your student notebooks on page 117, you're going to notice lots of words with that IGH. Here's your job. You're going to cut out those words and you're going to try to sort them into categories. You can either sort with someone next to you, you can sort as a group, you can sort as an entire class. I will give you a hint. You're only going to sort these words into 2 categories or 2 columns. So look for words that are similar and try to put words in each of the categories. Now at this point you may want to pause the video because I'm going to keep going and we're going to talk about the rule, but I want you to discover the rule about the IGH. Think about, where do you see the IGH or the GH even by itself? Do you see it at the beginning, middle, or end of a word? What do you notice? What you should have noticed as you were exploring is that you can divide this into 2 different categories. You have words where IGH is just all by itself, right? At the end of a word. Let me give you an example, like the word sigh. It's all by itself at the end of the word. And what do I mean by all by itself? In other words, it's not IGH with a T at the end. Like in the word bite. Okay? Does that make sense? So you should have sorted it into 2 categories. One category has IGH at the end of the word, and then the IGH has a T at the end of the word. That leads us to a new rule. So let me go over this rule really quickly. Do you see how there's just a GH and then a GHT? The reason there's not an I on this rule is because there are other instances where we have a GH in a word and it doesn't have an I in front. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So see how there's a line and then the GH and the GHT? It's showing that this is at the end of English words. Does that make sense? Do you see this? This means sound. So the GH and the GHT, make the sound either, here's the rule, they either make no sound, it's silent, there's absolutely no sound, or it's pronounced with an F or F sound. Now, I don't know, did you look at your list? Did any of our IGH words have a F sound at the end? They didn't, did they? We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's look at some of these words, okay? S, I. Do you hear the GH sound in that word at all? Sigh, sigh. No, you didn't hear it, did you? Let's try this one. Bite, bite. Do you hear the GH in that word? No, you didn't hear it, did you? As a matter of fact, in all of your words, you never hear the GH, do you? It's completely silent. And in this phonogram, all it's doing is working together with the I to make an I sound. Now, Mr. Slates, what about that sound? That doesn't really happen, does it? Well, let me give you an example. Okay? And this is a GH where there's no I in front. This is the word rough. 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 Later on in Logic of English, we will learn that this is an entire phonogram altogether that actually makes 6 sounds. Amazing, right? But in this case, do you hear the f sound at the end? Rough. Rough. It's making a f sound. Here's another one. It rhymes with rough. Anyone know what that word is? Tough. Tough. Like this is so tough. Here's another one. Now you would think, oh, these must rhyme. Rough, tough, cuff, right? Wrong. This makes a lot of sounds. This O-U-G-H. This is the word cough. Cough. The last one we're going to do is totally different, and it has an A-U and a G-H. This is a really common word that you all just need to know because you're going to find it in every book, practically, that you read, as long as it's funny. Anyone know what this word is? Laugh. Laugh. Do you hear how the GH is making the f sound? I don't say la. That is not how I say that word. Nor do I say ra. So do you see how when you go to sound out a word, it doesn't always work to stretch out every single sound unless you know some of these phonograms that are larger, that are longer, which is why we teach you this phonogram. You need to know this. You should not be sounding each sound out. I, g, ha. It's I, 3-letter I. Okay, boys and girls, I hope you have a great day. Enjoy Lesson 8.